Welcome to the Strength and Leadership Podcast. My name is Chris Jones. I'm the pastor of Hope Community Church, and my prayer for you is that this would help strengthen your leadership. We've been diving into some things here lately about momentum and becoming the person you need to be to handle where momentum takes you. And if you watched the last episode, you know that I talked about the danger zone of momentum when you just ride the wave and it takes you to a place that you weren't prepared to go. Today, I want to talk to you about becoming the person that you need to be, really leaning into that idea. And I was struck, we were on a staff retreat about a month ago, and a gentleman by the name of Gordon MacDonald was leading us in a leadership teaching. And he made the comment that every 5 to 7 years you need to reinvent your inner person, your inner self. And that was challenging. He said everything outside of you is changing. And if you don't reinvent yourself, if you don't lean into change in your personal life, you're not going to keep up. And so what we find in our culture nowadays, especially in leadership, is we're taking a ton of personality tests or gift tests, and we're figuring out what our strengths are and our geniuses and what our Enneagram number is and what your strength finder is, the whole 9 yards. And the temptation is to find out that information and just land there like you've been buried in a bed of concrete. The truth is that all those things do is give you a snapshot of where you are in the moment. It's like a Polaroid picture of who you are, what your core motivations are, what your giftings are in the moment. And really what leadership requires of you is to be constantly adapting and changing, to be constantly tweaking those things about you, to be constantly improving things about yourself. And so in that teaching, it struck me every 5 to 7 years, you have to reinvent your inner person. So I want to challenge you. Last time we talked about momentum taking us to a place, and then looking ahead, anticipating where you were going and who you needed to be as a leader and person to be there. How would your character stand up when you got there? What type of influence would you need? What type of skill set would you need? And so today I want to lean into that a little bit more and come up with a little bit of a process for you to do this. So one of the first things that I think needs to happen is we need to look down the hill and see where we're going and see what will be required of us when we get there. Be honest about what will be required of us. We're in a season of growth here at Hope Community Church. We are making early plans to add on to multiple buildings, and which will require a lot of change around here. Multiple campuses need more space, and it will require a lot from the leadership. Okay, so we can look down a couple years and see that. So then we can start asking the question, all right, what type of leader do I have to be if the size of the church doubles? What type of leader would you have to be if the size of your business doubled in 5 years? What type of leader would you have to be? I can guarantee you can't be the person you are today. So who would you have to become in 5 years to be able to handle that type of stress, to be able to handle that many employees, to be able to handle that much complexity? Who do you have to become? So the first thing we have to do is look ahead to what's coming, and then find and then take an honest assessment of what is that going to require of me. All right. The second thing is to take an assessment of yourself about who you are. And if you haven't taken the test, you should take the test. You should find out what your core motivations are. You should find out what you're gifted at, all those things. But when you find that out, don't treat it like concrete, treat it like a Polaroid. And make the commitment that in 6 months, you're not going to be that same person. So if you're somebody that's extremely passive and yet you're going to be taking on more responsibility, Maybe you need to be more assertive at some point in time. If you're somebody that's extremely assertive, maybe you have to figure out how to let other people voice their opinions. The thing is you have to figure out where you are in this moment right now, what's going to be required of you in the future, and then figure out how much you need to change to be able to handle that in the future. So here's what I've found out over the years. You probably can't come to that assessment on your own. Probably won't be honest. We are all biased towards ourselves typically. So I've found out in my life over the years it is beneficial to ask people that are around me, ask people that I can trust, ask people that are for me and want the best for me, and ask people, most importantly, that will be honest with me. And so I'm going to ask some questions like, do I include people? Do I value people's opinions? Do I communicate enough or clearly? Do I encourage the people around me? Do I include more people? These are the type of questions I'm going to ask over and over and over again to get a picture of the type of leader I am right now. And if I start getting feedback, you don't communicate enough details. Well, that's a real issue I have. Now, I could just lean into my personality and say, well, I don't do that. But that's not what is being required of me. In order to go to that next level, where the momentum is carrying me, I need to become the person that can give more details. I need to become the person that can do those things. So I get honest feedback. The key to honest feedback is the ability for you to listen. Not give your commentary on somebody's critique of you, but listen. Be quiet and listen. Don't defend yourself. Don't make excuses. Don't just excuse it away, but listen and take it in. There is truth in every critique. There's a little bit at least in every critique. So if you've surrounded yourself with people who love you and care about you and want to see you succeed, then probably most of what they say is going to be true. So just listen. Then when you're done listening, now you have a picture. You have a picture of where you're going to be, what that's going to require, and now you have a picture of who you are currently. Now comes the simple yet hardest thing that we do. The simplicity of it is I just need to go from here to here. This is what's going to be required of me. This is who I am now. So this is the amount of change that needs to take place. That's simple. Doing it is the hard thing. And so I want to encourage you. It is possible to change your personality. It is possible to change the way you respond. It is possible to control your emotions. It is possible to do all these things. Your brain is not locked in concrete. It has a massive amount of neuroplasticity. And the challenge is for us to tap into that and lean into changing us, not just our circumstances. So let me give you this illustration. What our culture does today is we infinitely change our circumstances without ever changing ourselves. And what I mean by that is we're in a relationship we don't like. Well, we don't change ourselves, we change the relationship. And we know that by divorce statistics. And we know that even more by people who've been divorced multiple times. You could argue that the divorce rate in the United States hovers somewhere around 50%. But the divorce rate for second marriages is in the upwards of 67%. Divorce rate for third marriages is upwards of 73%. So what we find out is people aren't changing themselves. They're changing their circumstances every time at a higher rate. When a job becomes hard, we don't say, hey, I need to become the person that can handle this stress. We say, this is too much stress. I need to go somewhere else. And so we do that over and over and over again. We do it in church, in the pastorate. Pastors don't stay at churches long. Why? Because it gets hard. It gets difficult. We don't change ourselves. We just change churches. So what I want to encourage you is success is on the other side of changing yourself, not your circumstance. Because success comes with all these extra difficulties, all these extra complications, all these extra problems. And the only way to navigate that is for the leader to change. And so this is where my encouragement is. Wherever you are today is not who you should be or will be in 5 years. But that's totally up to you. You have the power to stay the same or to change. Now, the Bible tells us that we should be constantly moving. The Bible doesn't tell us to become more of who we are. It tells us to become more like Jesus. It doesn't say you should be satisfied with where you are. No, it says to keep changing, keep improving, keep becoming more like Christ. James writes to the church and says, it's not enough to say you have faith if you don't have any, if there's no evidence of the change, if there's no evidence that you're doing something different. So it's not enough to say it and not do it. And then he actually even says it's not enough to look into the Bible and read it. You have to apply it and change. That's the real evidence that you understood it. And so in our faith world, it's a constant that we should be leaning more into Jesus and becoming less like us. So why isn't that true about the leadership world? This is not about just, I need to get totally different people around me. No, I need to become the person that can lead different people. I need to become the person that can lead more people. I need to become the person that can lead more complexity. And so we do this little process. We look down the road. The momentum is carrying us into a certain direction. We look down there, figure out where that's going to take us. Then we say, okay, who do I have to become when I'm there? Who will I have to be if this organization is double the size? Now we take an assessment of where we are currently. We know who we have to be, and that equals the change that needs to be made. And I'm telling you, every 5 to 7 years, you'll be doing this process. But here's what I want you to lean into. If the process never stops, if it's just a continual thing, if you do it every quarter, every 6 months, every year, you sit down at the end of the year and you say, who do I have to be next year? And you lean into that process, then you'll never be behind. You'll never play catch up. You'll always be ready for the place the momentum takes you the next time. So I want to encourage you. This is how we strengthen leadership right here. We're always making the adjustment first. So why don't you try that this week? Why don't you look down the road, see where the momentum's taking you, and then make the commitment to change to be the person that can handle where you're going. We'll see you next time. Strengthen leadership this week. Let's do it together.